Welcome to this midweek devotional. Have you ever lost your trust in someone or something? Well, I can think about most recently in baseball, the whole cheating scandal related to the Houston Astros was a big headline that was all across the country, and a lot of baseball fans really felt cheated about all the process of this particular organization and winning and so forth. And in today's passage, we're looking at something somewhat similar. Where there seem to be some believers, some Christians, that actually have lost belief in the resurrection. And Paul, in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, seeks to explain to the believers the meaning of the resurrection, the significance of it. And so today I want to read a passage that I think is very appropriate for our times today. It comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 58, and it says the following. Therefore, my beloved brothers, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that in the Lord your labor is not in vain. So in this passage, again, we come to this point where Paul is writing after the whole chapter explaining the significance of the resurrection for the believers, for the followers of Jesus, and also the significance of his work related to sin and overcoming sin. Because of the death and resurrection. And so now at the end of this chapter, Paul is going to show us how is it that we are supposed to live? How is it they were supposed to live, knowing that they have the foundation of the resurrection? And so first he starts off with them saying, be steadfast and immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. Steadfast and immovable. They were called to proclaim, to sustain, to believe in the truth and in the reality of the resurrection. They were supposed to be immovable. Where some of them had become immovable, where some of them had embraced other ideas that weren't related to the reality of the resurrection. And the really cool part about this passage is that at the beginning of it, Paul makes it very evident that people saw Jesus after he resurrected. There were eyewitnesses, not only the disciples, but many, many, many people. And so they had all experienced this. And so now part of the Christian vocation was to testify and to proclaim the good news of the gospel. Which leads us to the second part of this passage where it says, always abounding in the work of the Lord. And so if the foundation of our faith is the life of Jesus, his work on the cross and his resurrection, then out of the wellspring of that truth and reality, we're called to be abounding in the work of God. And so anytime we engage activities in this world and we say, you know, God, I give this to you, we can confidently say that we will be able to be abounding in the work of God. Again, in all this pandemic that we've been living, there's been so many different approaches, not only to this crisis, but also just to the way of living, our different rhythms of work and play and recreation and being with family. But the core teaching here that we're starting to see is that the resurrection and our belief in the reality of the resurrection that sustains our faith should allow us to go forth in whatever we're doing and do the work of the Lord. Which then brings us to the last part of this passage where Paul says, knowing that in the Lord your labor is not in vain. So earlier in this passage in chapter 15, Paul says that the belief, if Jesus did not resurrect, then our belief is futile or in vain. In other words, if the resurrection wasn't a reality, then why does all this matter? But of course, Paul is trying to convince and remind the believers that yes, the resurrection is a living reality. Yes, the resurrection is something important. And here at the end, Paul reminds us that whatever work we do, because of the resurrection, because of the presence of Jesus in our lives, it's not in vain. It's actually for a purpose. So the things that we engage with all throughout the days and weeks here currently that we're living, it's not in vain. It actually has significance and meaning because Jesus gives it significance and meaning. His resurrection, presence in our lives gives it meaning. So I hope that you're encouraged by this word today. And as always, don't forget to join us this weekend on Facebook and YouTube at 10:30 as we engage our online worship service. Go in the peace of Christ that passes all understanding.